Good morning and welcome to the Sovereign CEO podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Ann, and I'm joined today by Bruriyah de Leon. Today's episode, or today's guest, is a 5-1 generator, and we are continuing on in our series of exploring how different energetic identities create influence, create wealth, and build aligned business success. As a 5-1, she is here to be a wisdom bearer, a messenger, somebody who brings something from the fringes into the mainstream. And as a 1-line, she's somebody who is here to develop a depth of wisdom and mastery and weave that into her work. She's the teacher and someone who has deep expertise that then brings resources to the collective. But what's really interesting about Bruriyah and her story is that she leads a collective of 74 licensed financial professionals. She's built a passive multi-six-figure income and often works in pajamas. But the most important part of her story isn't the money. It's that for years she didn't believe that she was capable of creating the life that she has now, and how she helps so many other people to do it too. Now, we can see this in her chart, but I won't take too long going into her chart or going into her story. But where we look at her chart and we see two really interesting things, we see that she has a defined sacral, which is sustainable workforce energy. It's about mastery and building consistency and long-term investment. It's built her 50s. Her 5027 channel is the nurturer, and this is where it really links with her building this network of multimillionaires eventually, basically. She's the nurturer, the protector, and the provider, ensuring that the tribe survives. So that 50 to the 27 is in the highest expression is doing exactly what you're doing. It's creating opportunities and a sustainable way for everyone in the tribe, the collective, the world, to build and eat sustainably. And this is about what we see in her chart is someone who has risen into her highest potential because she's a leader who has built structures that instinctively support other people. And over time, she's built professionals and developed people. But the last thing I'll say before we get in is that she has a split definition. And again, in the highest expression, this is someone who's not designed to be a one-woman empire. She is designed to create networks, ecosystems, connections. So what's interesting is that you haven't built as a solo operator or success by being alone. You've done it by being in the network. So let's begin. Tell us what you do and what you've done.
That is so cool to hear. Thank you for that, sharing all of that reflection. Yeah, so what I do, I've developed this collective, as you mentioned, where we are all independent, licensed financial professionals, and I provide mentorship and support and coaching to predominantly women, although not at the exclusion of men, just kind of what I've attracted very unapologetically. And I mentor and coach them to basically learn how to be independent financial professionals and then how to then sit with clients, families, individuals, business owners, and teach them first and foremost core financial concepts to learn how money works because most of us were unfortunately never taught this in school. Which is a whole other rabbit hole that's definitely by design. And and then after they provide that much needed sort of financial literacy, then they actually go through and help these clients put together a roadmap to achieve their financial goals and dreams. So they sit down, they sort of gather the data, find out where they are currently, where's their income, expenses, debt, savings, assets, all of it. And then they find out what their dreams and goals are. Because most people don't, we always say, most people don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. And so what my collective is here to do is to uplift and empower individuals and families through providing the map, through providing the plan. And at the end of their time together, if our clients are interested, then they can also assist them in implementation of the plan. So that can look like setting up a variety of different accounts, insurance policies, setting up savings plans, setting up an estate plan, setting up a debt management or payoff plan, all of the above. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do and how we help our clients.
That's amazing. And why do you think financial illiteracy is such a normal thing in our society?
I mean, I'm gonna reveal my conspiracy theorist mask now, but yeah, I mean, I think it's by design because the oligarchs and people in power, the billionaires in power who are making all the decisions, it's a lot easier to control and dominate a population that's illiterate, who are basically just kind of like cogs in the wheel, worker bees, and so whereas if people are empowered with financial literacy, how money works, a roadmap to achieve financial independence, to be debt free, to be financially free, well, then people are not as easy to control. So, unfortunately, I think that's very much by design, and that's why I feel so passionate about this work. Is because I really strongly believe everybody deserves equal access to financial education, as well as the same tools and the resources and the instruments that are usually reserved for the wealthy. In fact, in the traditional financial industry, because I would say we're quite non-traditional, in the traditional financial industry, these services are usually gate kept. So you need to have $500,000 of liquid investable assets just to have a conversation with an advisor who typically is not taking a trauma informed, holistic approach. They're typically just saying, do this, do this, do this. There isn't much education. It's not a really collaborative process. And so we really attempt to like dump that whole model upside down on its head and provide loving care, attunement, and real for our clients to really feel held from beginning to end.
I literally feel a bit emotional listening to that because I see how deeply political it is, as in, and revolutionary. This is pretty much why I initially went into education, because there was a deeper mission and an underlying need to help raise and elevate people through intellectual thinking, so that they wouldn't be manipulated. Because I knew that for me, education was a path out of poverty. So what I'm hearing from you right now, I would love to know, what is the general limiting belief or the myth that people who are not, the bog standard, who is your client? Like, would it be a woman who is like a teacher or a nurse, or just a normal person who's got a job who wants to be a little bit more savvy? Would that be the kind of person you would serve?
Yeah, literally anybody. I would say, like, the only person that it would be really hard for us to help would be someone who just has, like, literally no income because
Yeah,
we're not magicians,
yeah.
but for any average person who has income, then they don't need to be wealthy, they don't need to have a lot of assets. A lot of the education we provide is also helping them sort of, like, rewire some of their, their habits as well, because, the thing is that oftentimes, of course, there's privilege in the world, and of course, there's people who are just, there's trust fund babies and stuff that exists. But a lot of the time, also, people's financial situations is a result of poor habits, which is the result of illiteracy, right? So if we can educate them, teach them some just very simple but meaningful shifts so that they can actually create new patterns to take themselves out of that position. I think like the biggest misconception that people have is if they're not already rolling and they don't have tons of money saved and invested, they feel like it's almost like too late and there's no point. It's almost like a lost cause. I think that's a very common, unfortunate misconception. And really all it takes is a decision. It takes, just like any real change in life, it takes a decision to do something different, and then, of course, to know where support exists.
What I love about you as well is that you're not just coming at reality from a 3D perspective. You have deep wisdom around metaphysics, energetics, neuroscience, a lot of things that you're weaving into your work. So from a spiritual perspective or metaphysical, how much, because, okay, here's the thing. The fifth line brings practical solutions. You are someone who brings practical solutions to people. And equally, I'm hearing trauma informed, I'm hearing rewiring beliefs and patterns. So and again, that with that one line, what I'm seeing is that you're like, hey, there's more to this issue than it. So what do you think? Why do you think so many people are struggling with money from a metaphysical perspective? And if we were, yeah, what's your angle as well on like the law of assumption? Where would you go with that?
So, like, think for a minute, like, why do I feel like people struggle with money? I mean, I think it's predominantly, systemic. I think it's predominantly conditioning. And I think when we look into like some of those deeper shadow patterns, it's a feeling of unworthiness a lot of the time. It's a feeling of, you know, eh, not being capable, right? There's a lot of those limiting beliefs there where it's like, especially if you've never experienced wealth, right? So then from a metaphysical perspective, it's like we don't get what we want, we get what we expect. And if all
Mm,
we've ever known is lack and poverty, it's very hard to expect something completely different. It takes a complete rewiring of our software to literally like brainwash ourselves to believe, wait a minute, just because my parents did this and just because their parents did this doesn't mean that I am doomed to the same fate. I get to choose very specific thoughts and create the reality I desire. But it's a lot easier to say those words than it is to really feel it in an embodied, somatic, like felt sense perspective. So yeah.
yeah, and so when we look at actually, what's really great as well is just looking at your chart. This idea. You have the 1156, so teaching us through story is actually one of your biggest marketing assets, and the way that you connect with us. And I was just feeling that, so randomly put that in. But we looked at your open defined will center. I'm sorry, undefined will center. I have an undefined will center, and I've had a long journey with money, and still working on wealth, consciousness, as well as worthiness. So when we have an open or undefined will center, we see a predictable pattern here of somebody who is going to explore themes of unworthiness and proving themselves. And often people with that, until it's deconditioned, until you've risen into your power and into the alignment with your chart, which you have, you probably undercharge. You probably have a lot of limitation around what's possible for you. So tell us what flipped for you when you just tell us your story around that, and then what flipped. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. It's levels, there's layers. And I feel like we have so many layers of awakening and so I grew up in a I didn't grow up in poverty. My family was very middle class, maybe lower middle class, but there was a deep sense of scarcity anyways, a lot of poverty consciousness and, um, yeah, and just like frugality to the point where it was kind of like OCD, and so there was just this feeling of like major limitation, like
Mm.
we can't do things that's only for rich people, they can only do that, like know your lane, like stay in your lane kind of thing. That was deeply, deeply entrenched. And I think that, the silver lining in that is that like it propelled in me this just very deep desire to like do the opposite. I think that's true for a lot of us when we have dysfunctional or, challenging past. It's like so much of who we become and our journey is around like the reclamation from
Yeah.
those parts. So that was already deep inside me, but I didn't have any like the unworthiness was still predominant. And it was really when my firstborn son was diagnosed with autism that I had my spiritual awakening. He was like the catalyst for my spiritual awakening. And it started through me discovering, that this kind of the deeper truths around the autism epidemic. I don't need to go deep into that, but and the pharmaceutical industry. And so I sort of like got this like 4D veil lifting. Um
Mm.
And then that led me, so I for a couple years, I was just, like, in anger and rage, and, like, I still remember I'd go on Facebook and every single post would be like, "Screw Big Pharma and screw this and screw that," and I was just so mad, but and disempowered. And then it led me to, I actually went to this therapy program for families who had kids on the spectrum, and it was based in a lot of personal development concepts. So that was my first real official introduction to the world of personal growth and personal development. And I went there and I took all the autism trainings, level one, two, three, and then I was like, I can't get enough. Like, I want more. So that's what led me deep down the rabbit hole of personal development. And I started studying spirituality and metaphysics and Eastern philosophy. And the more and more I studied, I just like couldn't, I was ravenous. Like, I could not get enough. And it blew my mind. I was just like, oh my gosh, like, happiness is a choice? What?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't even believe it because I was asleep for so many years and felt
Yeah.
just so disempowered. And it was through a lot of that study and that research that I started really confronting some of those limiting beliefs and started, well, what if I could be ridiculously wealthy? What if I could? And it, of course, when you first start even considering those possibilities, it feels so foreign. But in my experience, what happened is that then things in my life started to shift. So, like, at the time I was a single mom, I was working all these side hustles and gigs and just trying to, like, just barely surviving. I was on public assistance. And then all of a sudden I get let go from this job, they shut down. All of a sudden my income's gone. The universe started rearranging things. And that's really what led me to the financial industry because I was in desperation, just reaching out to my network. And I asked in a group of parents in my son's preschool, and I said, if anybody has any opportunities, like, I need to make extra money. And one of the moms reached out and she said, I can't promise you anything, but I might have an opportunity for you to finance in Beverly Hills. And initially, I felt very turned off. I was like, "Ew," like, I was like, "Finance," like, because I'm this, like, creative, like, hippie. I'm like, "Why would I be interested in finance?" But then the light bulb went off, and I was like, "Wait a minute. I'm reading all these books on manifestation and money mastery," and then it's like, she said finance in 90210, like, the wealthiest zip code in the world. It was
I
just
know.
like,
I had Beverly. I was like Beverly Hills.
yeah, so then I realized, oh, this was the response to my ask. Like, this was not just it's not just finance. And so then I opened my mind. And ever since then, that really was the entrance into this world. And since starting that world, there's been so many deeper layers of unraveling of the unworthiness and feeling capable. I've been in the industry for a decade. So it's been a journey. But I'd say that's kind of how it all unraveled, how the cookie crumbles.
Amazing story. And I love how you followed your basically it was your and it is your soul's curriculum. Let's have a look. So your North Node, so communication, 11 storytelling. Oh, 11 twice in your North nodes. So when we look at your chart as well, we see that you're fractal clients. So I don't know, do you know what a fractal is? So something I've been developed. So I'm a 1-3 projector, and again, our stories, in fact, our awakenings, they got our soul guides us to the things that we need to learn, and as in literally to support our mission on the planet. And for me, having had 20 years or so in education, 7 years in mainstream before my awakening and burnout, I wandered the earth for a year and then came across human design, but I was already like learning other modalities, deconditioning really, and connecting with angels and opening my consciousness. And the same thing, The Secret and Abraham Hicks, and wow, I could change my reality. Wow, because like I had this deep traumatic experience, and then landed in Thailand, quit my job, and then boom, oh hey, I can create my own reality. And that was my like opening into that shift in consciousness about what reality, the nature of reality. But I the human design came to me, and it took me about 2 more years of ignoring it because I was like, I don't want to learn a system. I've just mastered education, like to the depths. But the point of saying that is I have something called an incarnation cross of the racks of penetration. And interestingly, for people like me, we often zoom into very like fringe areas of a system or an idea, which is what I did in education. And the link is that everything is always to do with consciousness. It was always about teaching children how to think, or teaching learners like metacognition. So, like always going into consciousness and going deeper and deeper, and then in different ways. But with human design, I began to get deep into something what I call the sacred geometry of business, and it's to do with this idea that we are all fractals, meaning that as we move through life, we along the way we meet people that are splits of our consciousness. And so in our chart, I've been developing something called the fractal first formula, which is the fractal first approach to social media selling, meaning when we understand who our fractal clients are, it makes content, it makes the offers, and it makes our narrative, especially when we're doing, as I'm moving into the category of one work, which is linked to my chart as well. It's like zooming in on your absolute genius, your actual story, and how your energetics allow us to build a brand that can make 7 and 8 figures linked to that. So we're not playing we're not making shit up anymore. We're zooming in. And yours, I'm your fractal. So your fractals are third lines and fifth line. So anyone who is a third line profile or anyone who is a fifth line is your actual, is the person that is, when you're speaking, they're going to feel you on a cellular level. So when you understand that, we all do it unconsciously. That's why for a long time I avoided human design, because I was like, I'm already following my soul. Like I don't need a system. But actually, it's really, really useful as you go on. So yeah, it's interesting that I am your third line. I'm your fractal, but that 11 is twice in your nodal trajectory. In fact, you've got 12 and 11. Wow. Anyway, your nodal trajectory is the pathway that you go through, your soul curriculum, as you step deeper and deeper and deeper into your actual purpose. Um, Lacks of distraction. Okay, so your journey, that 11 is the innovator, the ideas, and it's somebody who's bringing. It's vision. It's visionary. And what I see in front of me is a very powerful visionary. Now, we do talk about the fifth line as a visionary, but when we see the 11, and that's actually my pearl, the 11 is someone who is here to bring a new vision for the collective. And look how aligned that is with what you do. Um, so let's look. What what has investing in people? Because I remember when we spoke briefly to set this up, like you spoke about the power and importance of investing in people. What did that teach you about leadership?
Oh my gosh, I literally just got off a call right before this one where I cried in front of like 70 people because one of the women I've been mentoring just hit like a big milestone in her career. And I think that's one of the sort of like unexpected but most fulfilling and rewarding parts of what I do. You know, when I first sort of found this industry and I understood how leverage works and being able scalability and being able to scale a business, it was very strategic. You know, I'm less familiar with human design, as you know, but I am a big astrology nerd, and my moon is in Capricorn in astrology. So I'm very like, let's go, let's climb up the mountain, like strategy, you know? And so it's very just like very strategic, just black and white, like, yeah, okay, I'm going to scale and get people and I'm going to mentor them and invest in them. And the beautiful thing that has really come from it, it's just like, oh my gosh, the depth of relationships and the intimacy. There's something I could probably go on forever about this. There's something so very distinctly precious about the mentor mentee dynamic. And
Oh
I
God,
say
yeah.
that both as a mentee as well as a mentor. And that the longer I'm in business, the more I appreciate my mentor and his wisdom. Just it kind of like it deepens with time somehow. And now that I'm also in a mentorship role for others, and it's just the most fulfilling, enriching, beautiful thing because watching people grow and watching people reach their highest potential is like, it really is, that's the reward. Like, it really, really is. It's like, I think all it's the universe likes, I always talk about how the universe likes to create this like cosmic irony all the time. And like you mentioned Abraham Hicks, which is one of my Abraham is my OG, like number one teacher of all time. And Abraham always says that you want the thing you want the success, you want the love story, you want the perfect body, you want the money in your bank account, you want all of that stuff because you believe that when you have it, you'll be happy, right? And so kind of like the hack that Abraham always talks about is like, just be happy and then all that stuff will come. It's the I'll see it when I believe it, not I'll believe it when I see it. And I feel like mentorship is very much the same way. And it's like, okay, you want to scale a business, you need to mentor people, you need to have leverage. But the sort of like unsuspecting cosmic irony is like, oh my gosh, like this was the actual reward. This was the reward, like more than the money and the prestige and the success and the accolade, this was the reward. So I think,
Mm.
you know, for me, investing in people has just been obviously it's been like it's in the physical 3D reality. It's been the tool that's brought my physical achievement. But I would say on the deeper, more psycho spiritual plane, it's been deeply enriching and rewarding.
Yeah. I agree. Um, exactly. And I think I'd hate to bring it always back to the human design thing, but one lines are the actual original mentors. I mean, there's loads of markers of mentorship in the chart, but the one line, because of that, the depth, because that hunger for knowledge and that desire and the need, in fact, to act, the role. When we look at profile, we're looking at somebody's role in this lifetime that will guide that they empowers them to serve in their highest expression on this planet. So the one line is the teacher, like, or the mentor, teacher, coach, however it manifests. It's about empowering other people and through knowledge. So I don't know if this question's relevant or how you feel about it, but because I'm looking again, thinking about, I think it's a shift in perspective, because it's like, how did building leaders become more powerful than building clients? Because yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's where I can get into a little bit of like business strategy because and this when my mentor taught me this concept, this is what changed everything for me. And that's the idea of the cash flow quadrant. And this was
Oh,
termed by Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And basically the you know, basically what he explains is that like 90% of the population falls in quadrants 1 and 2, which is being an employee or being self-employed. And in those two quadrants, you're basically trading your time for money. So again, if I'm focusing on clients, I'm one person, I have 24 hours in a day. So even if I'm like the best of the best in my industry, and even if I charge the most premium rate, I still have 24 hours in a day. There's a ceiling on what I can physically produce by myself in that time frame. Whereas if I build a system, if I build a business, so Robert Kiyosaki talks about quadrants 3 and 4. So 3 is this being a business owner, 4 is being an investor. So that's where 90% of the world's affluent are in quadrants 3 and 4, but that's only 10% of the population. So that, we always hear success leaves clues. That tells you something that successful people are in quadrants 3 and 4. And so if I'm a business owner, the difference between me being sort of self-employed versus being a business owner, as a self-employed person, it's me. I might run my own schedule. I might determine my own rates. So I have some more freedom and flexibility from that sense, but I'm still one person. Whereas as a business owner, I have a system, and that system is leveraging usually other people, and that is generating a profit or cash flow for me, whether I work or not. So very similar to like any franchise. Like if you were to go buy a McDonald's, you're gonna buy a Pizza Hut, right? You're basically the reason people buy franchises is because they already have a proven system that's proven to be effective, that generates a cash flow. And so if I buy a McDonald's, I have average ordinary people running the system for me. That generates a cash flow for me whether I work or not. And that's scalable ad infinitum. I could scale that to up to, you know, the wazoo essentially because it's just leveraging other people. And so my impact, first of all, my impact is infinitely greater because I'm able to support the collective with my products and services on a mass scale, but also in terms of my own cash flow and my level of success that I can attain, it's infinitely greater because I have leverage versus just me being the business.
Mm.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think this is something I'm gonna listen to over and over again. I love how magical, like, actually exciting you make money. And I'm like, I'm Capricorn Sun, so I'm like, "Right, I need to learn this shit."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did actually own that book, but I need to reread it actually.
Yeah.
But my mind's ticking. I'm like, "How can I do this?" Because I said that on our 10-minute call I was like, "I wanna do this. How can I do this?" Okay, so yes, my journey, I really do I'm not there yet, but I definitely want to be a multimillionaire through my service, through the business that I create, and I don't know how, but I know that it's coming. And I want to raise the wealth frequency of the planet and the consciousness of the planet. And for me, my story is poverty. Like I have come from like a household where people on welfare, where people did not have money. And we didn't own our own house. Like I didn't see anyone in my family owning their own house. My brother is a 3-5 and he's actually a really quite a successful entrepreneur now and coach and into personal development and things like that. So, but I have still yet to succeed in the way that I want to succeed. But I see that happening quite soon, actually. I truly do. Like this year, after 7 years of deep shadow work, training, like building my body of work, I see that happening, quantum shifts happening over the next few months and years because that's how I work as well. It's built into my chart. I very much shifts just happen like quantumly for me. So we see that. Anyway, um, what was I gonna say? I was going to say, yeah, that book, I need to read that. How would somebody who's listening to this get in touch with you and say, like, I want to either get some financial support or I want to actually become part of your network and get some mentorship? How would that happen?
Well, I mean, I can be easily found on Instagram. That's probably one of the best places. So it's just my handle is just my name, Bruriyah. And and also I have a Facebook page. I haven't developed it as much, but it's there. And on Instagram, my link in bio has our intake forms. So anyone who's interested can fill out. There's two forms, one to apply to actually join our collective, and they would undergo the process of training and licensing and becoming a financial professional with my mentorship. And then there's this separate application form to book a financial strategy, and that's completely free. We don't charge anything to do that. So, and I can also give you that link. So if you want to put it on under the podcast, it's easy to find that people don't have to go searching. Yeah.
100%, yes. And final question then, before we wrap up. What would you tell the entrepreneur who can see possibility but doesn't yet believe it's available to them?
I think this is where I pull in a lot more of my sort of like metaphysics side, which is, you know, I would invite this person to like be playful and play with being delulu, like
Right.
play with being delulu as possible, because I don't think that majority of people have a problem with dreaming too big. I think the majority of people have the problem of, unfortunately, again, because of the society we are born into, of thinking small, of feeling limited, having a ceiling on what we think we're capable of. And so what would happen if you gave yourself permission to just dream? Like it's free. There's no risk involved with dreaming, and just giving yourself that that permission, because you know, for anything to come to fruition, first we have to dream it in our mind, you know, and we have to give ourselves permission to see it, visualize it, then I feel like when we put it on paper, it starts to make it real. Like I've the craziest things, like I just noticed this happen again today. I put some goals on a chalkboard last month, and then I was looking at my numbers today on my spreadsheets, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like exactly the number, you know? So it's like when we put things in writing, it's just something about that makes it real. And so it is written, you know? And then I do really believe the cooperative components of the universe come to bring it into reality. And so I would encourage someone like that, even if you don't see the how yet, give yourself permission to define the what. It's like what you just said about yourself. You said, I don't know exactly how it's happening, but this is happening. And I'm like, yeah, you go, girl. It sure is. Because if we don't give ourselves permission to first claim it in the liminal, then it's never gonna happen in the physical. So that's first thing that I would say, sure.
I resonate so deeply in as well. And I think it's just at this point, I just want to share a little bit about exactly how that first worked for me. So that 2018, I okay, let's just go back to 2017. I've left a school. So the October, I've initially left my school that I'd been at for 7 years, and I'm working, 70 to 100-hour weeks. I've got the Open Defined Center, Open Will Center, and I'm proving myself, and I'm driven not just by deep passion for my kids because I have this overly over functioning attitude towards my children about raising them, elevating their lives and being the best teacher. Now the shadow part of that was some of it I was driven by a need to prove that I was the best in the whole world, and so yes, there was deep passion and deep unconditional love around it because I wanted them to be the best, but there was a bit of an unhealthy workaholic aspect too. And I walked out of that school because I just wasn't there was no promotion. I had leadership that wasn't resonating with me because I was radical, because I was like, I've seen how to actually make this work, and now I'm seeing that the system doesn't work and it's not supporting these learners to actually get where they need. So there was a lot of radical and a lot of rage about the system itself. And I channeled that into becoming like the deepest expert, that I could to prove, and no one was listening. So I was like, well, I'm out. I'm going to build my own thing. And then I get I will go to India, and I'm physically exhausted. So I take some time, and then I'm like, well, I'll go and get another job. So I apply for 3 roles. I get three three roles on 3 interviews on one day. Get all the jobs because again, I'm just so passionate. And then I end up choosing a school that I went against my intuition, went against my splenic authority, because it was 5 minutes from my house. And I thought, how cool would it be to just walk to school rather than having to travel? And anyway, get in, and it was like a no place for me. It was completely not. It was. I've never seen a school like it. And so after about 3 months, I kept getting ill and ill and ill, and the head was like, "Look, you're not happy. Do you wanna go?" And I was like, "I can't because I have no money, basically. I have to work." And he was like, "Oh, I'll pay you till the end of the term." And I'm like, "Ugh, okay." I was so tired. I was like, and this place was just not for me. I was like, "Alright." So I walked out, and this was 2017. I said, because I literally was living paycheck to paycheck as well, and I was like, someone said, "Well, what are you gonna do?" And I was like, "Oh, the angels will catch me." And I've never said anything. I didn't know about angels or anything like that. I was an atheist, actually. And so I was like, "I don't know, the angels will catch me." But then at that point, I said, "I'm gonna build my business now. I'm gonna build educating experts and start my own tutoring business." Because I was a leading practitioner. I was literally at the leading edge of the new curriculum, of reforms, of critical literacy. Like, there was no there was no one that could actually beat me in terms of pedagogy and the innovation I was bringing to teaching and learning. So I was like, "I'm just gonna build my own business now because it makes sense." So I put it up, and within one day, I had a phone call from I just put a random thing up online, and 2 days later, I'm sitting with a very, very wealthy education consultant in Holland Park, which is, like, where, kings and queens live and all that. And I She said, "Would you like to go to Istanbul, to see if you want to take on this tutoring role for 8 weeks?" And I was like, "Ugh, enough." I'm like, "Yeah." So I go, and I end up at this billionaire's house, and, like, very, 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 I mean, super wealthy. Like, they own stuff, like the Sheraton Hotel. They own the Sheraton Hotel and many other things. And so I go, and I'm in their house, I'm living in a Sheraton, I'm just treated like royalty, and I get this job. And I get back and I sign the contract. I didn't even ask about how much it was, like, what's the money, da da da. And I'm used to living like £50 an hour for tutoring. And she's like, "Oh, by the way, it's 15,000 cash, 8 weeks." And I was like, and I was like, "Hey, this is what's possible for me now." So I'm like, this is what I want. I'm going to become a high-end tutor, which was perfect for me. I'm a one line, first and foremost. One lines are here to get to that mastery. I'm a projector. I didn't know that at the point, but I love luxury and I want ease. I've done my years of service. I've worked the fucking butt off. So I do this role. I've got my own driver, I'm living how I should be living, in my opinion. And I come back and I'm like, right, I want to build. And then I get sucked back because identity. And I get sucked back into like this opportunity arises that wouldn't go away. And it wasn't great, but it was to build an independent school ultimately. And I took a pay cut from my actual normal and but of I took like I was like instead of earning 50K, I was earning 35 because I had this passion to prove that my educational philosophy could work and that if I could prove it in this model, I could then create franchises. That was my thinking. So I was training staff, I was building all through curriculum, but again, 100-hour weeks and obsessed and taking stimulants to keep up. Well, I'm a projector. I don't have consistent sacral energy. I'm open in every single center. I don't have that energy to sustain that. So I do it for 18 months. And by the end of that, I'm physically burnt out. Like I can't do it. My body says no. But all of that to say, a coach and some terrible things happened as well. Like my life, my identity brought back in things that I hadn't shifted. So the men that I kept attracting would be the same men from my childhood, like quite violent and men that I would support. So financially, I was supporting these people because and that's how I've started developing the mother wounds, the father wounds, the relationship between attachment and money in my Maiden to the Queen program, which is coming later on, and the retreat, which is healing the huntress, because ultimately that's my story, this wounded huntress who now moves into the empowered huntress. So I get attacked and I'm like, okay, I can't be this leader and have domestic violence in my house. I get him out quickly, but I'm broken at my core because I'm like, all I keep doing is trying to build success in every single way. And I like, this is just terrible. Like I'm just never been loved. So my shadow starts to open and I quit that job in the November, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, having a dark night of the soul. I literally think my life is not making sense to me. I just want to die because I can't live anymore. And I also don't have any energy to do anything. And I was like, hey, so I rang my bro and I was like, my life is just falling apart. And he was like, why don't you get a coach? Because he was training at the IFS. And I was like, okay. So I call this coach over and she says 3 words that changed my life. What do you wanna be, do, and have? And I sat there and I was so numb, so disconnected from my own needs, I had no idea. And she said and I literally could not summon anything. And she said, "Well, okay, think back to when you were 20. What would you want to be, do, or have?" And some thoughts that I wrote travel, own my time, write my book in education. The December I got to Thailand, I'd quit the job and everything on that list, and I still have that little because I ended up in Thailand, and that's when I started meeting shamans or shamans and Reiki practitioners, and I began to heal, and I went deep into shadow work, and that's when I met Abraham Hicks. But the point is that whole year, everything shifted. I wandered the earth. I just said, "Get rid of everything." I wandered without any money, but just following synchronicities. And I gave away I was in Costa Rica and I said, give away my social housing, give away all my possessions. I trust this process. And that's what led me into my journey onwards and then finding my way. But as the point is, when you let go of that logician, what I call the logician mind, that little limited version of human, where we think, where we keep recreating the program because of that subconscious That's the I use the analogy of like a movie screen and you keep projecting that same thing. When you take that away and you start tuning into possibility, everything rearranges for you. As you said, these cooperative. And so that's what happened. And it carried on and carried on. It's not to say that life hasn't been challenging in those in between years as well. But I always know that every time it gets to a bottleneck, it's because I'm being called higher into that highest level, that higher, there's another way. Like, so recently for me, I I made a big sorry to keep going. We'll cut this off in a minute, but I made a big identity shift in January. So in November last year, I took a year out of my business because I was going through an evolution and I just wasn't clear. I have only integration, so things take time. I integrate things very, very deeply, and I'm a one line as well. And so I was like, what am I doing? What's making sense to me? And I took a year out and went through another big alchemy shift. But in the no- and I took on some supply work, and having not worked for so long, and in November I went to Bali, and in November I was meant to come back and do a whole year of teaching. So I thought, okay, I've got what I need to create this body of work, and now I will go and I'll make some consistent money coming in, so I'll cover my rent and da da da. Logician. My magician was like, "Fuck no, bitch. That's not gonna happen because it's not your path. Like, you're thinking too small." So I get after 2 weeks of signing this thing to work for a whole year, taken away. Like you said, it was like, and so I sat there and I was like, this is it." My higher self said to me, "You are the source of your supply. The initiation for you right now is that there's nothing external. It is internal you." And so December, January, no money. And then I get a referral and I pitch my um, like, contract for coaching. I secure that. And so the quantum shift, right, from like zero and working again with the identity of like, oh, I'm going to work 40 hours a week for this amount of money and shifting into, okay. So it's just reinforcing that thing about we just need to hold on to to the potential and the possibility and align ourselves with it. It's like not get bogged down into the limitation, which we is so easy to do.
Oh yeah. 1,000%. Yeah, my mentor always says you're either growing or you're dying. There's no such thing as stagnation in the universe. So if we're not intentionally expanding our capacity for more and stepping into version, that identity that we say we want, then we are inevitably slipping backwards and contracting. And I like to think about that because it's so easy to just be like, well, can I just take a pause right here for a minute? And it's like, well, you can, but you're probably going to contract when you do that. No.
Yeah, and it's like in honor of transparency as well. Like I had a really successful model with my projector success hub back 23, 24, 25, 24, and then it was like done. I was like, this is not me anymore. This is too small. This is not what I want. Doesn't work. And so that again, it's built into my chart. These cycles, these evolutions, and then I started like building a body of work which was around the maiden to the queen and the receptivity codes. But I realized, and then the universe kept sending me human design again and things. Anyway, and I was like, oh, okay, it's the sovereign CEO, which was planted in me in 2024. But again, my identity hadn't like lined up with that version of me that could lead and hold that. And so anyway, eventually I figured out because I was like trying to build this other thing, and it just was again, it was the content wasn't converting. I was building a following, but it wasn't quite right. And it's not a body of work I'm letting go of, but it was just timing, and I have a good sense of timing. And an old client came to me, and then the Silicon Valley guy, and it was like, "You need to build the sovereignty. This is what we're showing you." And so I rebranded and started to bring in the generators and the money gens, and building this whole collective of visionary leaders who are really changing things, the change agents that are like doing, service providers that are going to create wild things in this planet. And I opened that up, and then I started to channel exactly the service that I needed to provide right now. So after that one big client, there's been no consistent income. So the other day I was like, because like the rent. And I'm like, okay. So I I was like, I called a tutoring agency. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do some, some work. Can you just give me some work so I can just build what I'm building? And I signed up last week, 3 things, 3 jobs, and then all of them one by one just and for no like, you cannot that doesn't make any sense. They were all taken away, and I was like yesterday, I just sat there and I was just smiling because I know that what I'm building I know that money's on the way in terms of my offers and what I've built, and it was just like, I'm saying this to say to you, what my spirit said to me is, "Literally relax," because you're increasing your capacity. Stop trying to control this situation and move into what it is you're meant to be and surrender. And I did. And then, £500 dropped in yesterday out of nowhere. And so it was like, just fucking chill and follow the path. But it was about, I think what was just zooming in on what you said, it was this idea about capacity that when we are under pressure, it's like, what do you do? That's the initiation. What do you do when you're in a moment in real reality where the pressure is on? If you go back, you're just falling into contraction. But if you actually allow that moment to initiate you, you expand your capacity and the big thing comes. And, I expect actually, I know another 15K client's gonna come or a 20K client's gonna come from mentorship, and it will come out of nowhere. So that's just an example of right now, real reality of and I'll do a podcast when it happens to show you what kind of mindset, what kind of identity work that I did to stay in the trust and the faith.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I've been in that place so many times. So I know exactly what you mean about letting it initiate you. And it's deepening in the co-creation with spirit and doing your part, turning over the stones that you have in your scope, and then saying, you know what, I'm gonna step back and let God, universe, spirit do the rest. So I love that.
And I have to be honest, I have been more excited about the category of one offer that I have and the work that I have been doing and the shifts I've been creating with people than I have been for so, so long. So again, that energy, like I know I'm doing the work. I'm in the right place for me to serve others and have the impact that I'm literally designed to have because I love what I'm doing. And I think when you love what you're doing, it really there's nothing more fulfilling than actually being deeply aligned with your creative contribution and feeling like there is a feeling. There is actually not, I don't actually have any stress. I'm actually quite peaceful in my process right now because I have put in the work and yeah, I just feel the last time in my life when I felt this kind of it's an internal energy. I can't quite put my finger on it. But it was when I first qualified as a teacher, I remember walking out on the first day and thinking, wow, this is my purpose. And when you have this sense of this is what I'm here to do. And it's the same with the work that I'm doing now. So, okay, thank you so much. Is there one thing you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Well, it's a little bit inspired by your story and the coach, your first coach, and it's gonna sound cheesy, but that's okay because I'm here for the cheesiness. But I feel like if there is one thing that I would want to leave behind, it's probably the thing I most want to be remembered by in the world is being a fierce advocate for the idea that you can be, do, and have anything you
Yes.
desire. So I think that sums it all up. It's like when you have that possibility thinking, like you said, then you allow for infinite intelligence to come in and fill the grid in ways that surprise and delight you and um that you could have never imagined with your finite brain. So I think that's where all the magic happens. I love how you said magician versus logician. I'm gonna use that. It's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, because I've been again last year. I developed something called Shadow to Sovereign, and it's been developing and evolving. And it was started by focusing on the four core survival consciousness. The prostitute, the child, the saboteur, straight logician, um, and the victim. So we all have these four survival archetypes that drive our consciousness. And so I began to read because I love 11. You love archetypes. We think in archetypes, and that's why I started building the maiden to the queen. Like it's a like I'm just lying in my life. I'm just loving like all of this shit I'm creating because it's like brilliant. But you have to live it. You cannot teach it and build it. That's why I'm going through it. And 51 is my purpose. I'm awakened and initiated by life, and then I initiate others. But it's like that's why people hire me because of the depth and and the true integration that I've gone through. You can't fucking make it up. You have to live it. So I began creating these like this archetypal framework to teach people how to shift their consciousness. Again, very incarnation cross penetration. But on the other side of that is the magician, the warrior, the lover. So when we shift out, so when we're sitting down and like I could be going, oh, I've got no income right now. And how am I gonna, and I could be my victim. I'd be like that. Or I can shift into my magician and my lover and so I'm gonna pull a rabbit out of a hat. And look what happened yesterday. Oh, rabbit out of a hat. Oh, I'm gonna pour my energy into creating the most amazing thing, and I know that as I pour my energy into this thing, and the lover and the warrior, like I trust what I need will appear. And so it's that shit is a shift. It's an energetic and a frequency shift on a nervous system level, well, all levels. And so this archetypal framework is saying notice when the child is leading, the wounded child, because the higher level child is in wonder, in magic, in trust, in creativity. Now, when you're contracted and you're on the path, oh, I've had, I don't know where money's coming from, da 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 da, you're out. But when you can say, oh, I notice, thank you very much, and shift into the other version of that's available to you, move out of logician to magician, and the whole world rearranges. Anyway, we're gonna wrap it up. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have been here. It's always a delight to talk to you.
Yeah, and me too. And I'd love to do more of these because there's loads of ways we could. So many angles that we can talk about. So I'm going to wrap it up, listeners. If you want to reach Bruriyah, if you want to be a client or actually learn how to build a six-figure business as a financial advisor, the link will be in the comments. I would like you, if you've listened all the way, to like, subscribe, and follow. That I haven't been pushing that enough. I get a lot of downloads, but I'm not getting a lot of subscribers. So it would be great for you to subscribe. And yeah, if and again, I'd love to build a conversation around this. If you are excited about this type of conversation, move into the Sovereign CEO Facebook community for visionary leaders, people that are change makers and creating new levels of wealth on the planet. This is a place to build real relationships, build real connections, so that you can actually get in the room with potential clients, friends for life, and create what I like to say now. I think my new catchphrase is make the extraordinary ordinary. That's what I want.
Yes, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's thing.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.